Greetings from Somewhere, Book 7, The Mystery Across the Secret Bridge. Chapter 1, Salt Mines on a Cliff. Ethan Breyer peered over the edge of the rocky cliff. "Whoa! That's a big drop," he exclaimed. The roaring river down below looked like a skinny ribbon. "Yeah, I believe you," said his sister Ella, nervously. She kept her gaze straight ahead and clutched Butterscotch's reins. Butterscotch was the nickname she had given her Peruvian Paso horse. Ethan called his horse Keeper because he liked soccer. Ella, Ethan, and their parents, Andy and Josephine, were horseback riding through the Sacred Valley in Peru. The guide, Fernando, led the tour group along a dirt path that went steeply uphill. Towering mountains and lush green grass surrounded them. The Sacred Valley was the Breyers' second stop in Peru. The first stop had been the capital city of Lima.
Is this Peru?
Yeah, this is a country in South America.
Wait.
There's lots of jungle there.
Wait.
And llamas. Don't hurt that book, please. Let's put the books over here. In Lima, they explored catacombs, which were ancient passageways underground, and swam in the Pacific Ocean. It was the same ocean they swam in when they had visited their cousins in California the year before. The Breyer family was taking a big trip around the world. Mrs. Breyer was writing about their trip for the Brookston Times, which was their hometown newspaper. The family had already been to Italy, France, China, Kenya, and India since leaving Brookston several months ago. "Kids, check it out," Mrs. Breyer said, pointing. The twins gasped. Up ahead was a sight that was both totally awesome and confusing at the same time. Wild terraces had been carved into the side of a mountain. Along those terraces were little pools. Hundreds of white patches covered the pools, like snow, except it wasn't snow. "We have arrived at the Salineras de Maras, or the salt mines of Maras," Fernando the guide explained. "The people of this area have harvested salt since before the time of the Incas. There is natural salt water inside this mountain. The people let the salt water collect into pools. They wait for the water to evaporate or dry up in the sun. What remains are those white patches of salt you see right there." "Cool," Ethan said. He and Ella knew about evaporation from their dad's science lessons. He was homeschooling the second graders. "What are Incas?" Ella whispered to Mr. Breyer. "The Incas were people who used to live here more than 500 years ago," Mr. Breyer whispered back. "Can we walk around?" Mrs. Breyer asked Fernando as she tucked her blonde hair over her ear. "See, we will tether the horses and explore the mines on foot," Fernando replied. "We will even be able to taste some of the salt." People from the tour group began tying their horses to posts. As Ella tied up her horse, she noticed a little boy nearby. A blue toy snake was draped across his shoulders. "Isn't this great, Slither?" the little boy said to his snake. Standing next to him was a teenaged girl. She didn't look very happy. Ella wondered who they were, but before she could find out, it was time to begin the tour of the salt mines. Chapter 2, The Temple of the Sun. The Breyers spent most of the morning touring the salt mines. In the afternoon, they visited a nearby village. There, the twins got to meet some baby alpacas, which looked like little llamas. Ethan and Ella even helped weave some hats and scarves out of alpaca wool. Later that day, they checked out of their hotel in Maras and traveled to Aguascalientes, Peru. The town's name, Aguascalientes, meant hot water in Spanish, and it was known for its natural hot springs. So the Bryars put on their swimsuits. The springs were warm, like a hot tub. For dinner, the family went to a restaurant and ate a local dish called pachamanca. Pachamanca, or earth pot, was a way of cooking meat and vegetables under the ground with hot stones, leaves, and dirt. For dessert, they had picarones, which were fried donuts made out of pumpkin, sweet potato, and syrup. Kids, it's early bedtime tonight, Mr. Bryer announced when they got back to the hotel. He sank down on a cushy chair with a yawn. Mrs. Bryer skimmed through her notes. That's right. We'll be waking up at 5 in the morning to take a bus to Machu Picchu. Ethan and Ella said goodnight to their parents. Then they brushed their teeth, went to their room, and changed into their pajamas.
Dada, why did you do that?
So you can see the picture. They didn't want to go to sleep right away, though. Can you put it on the back cover?
Yeah.
First, they admired their souvenirs from the day. Ella's included a bag of pink salt and a purple alpaca scarf. The purple dye had been made out of berries and flowers. Ethan's included a bag of white salt and a green alpaca hat. The green dye had been made out of leaves and plant stems. Next, they decided to check their email. A new message popped up on the computer screen. It was from Grandpa Harry. It had been a while since they'd heard from him. The subject line said, "The Temple of the Sun." The Temple of the Sun? Ethan pulled on his hat, and Ella wrapped her scarf around her neck as they read the email together. To Ethan, from Grandpa Harry. Subject, the Temple of the Sun. Hello, my dears. Bienvenido a Peru. That means welcome to Peru in Spanish. Your mother tells me that your next adventure will be to explore Machu Picchu. This ancient Incan city is located on a high mountain ridge. Your Grandma Lucy and I visited it many years ago. We woke up in the middle of the night to hike to the top and see the sunrise. While you are there, be sure to check out the Temple of the Sun. Also, I seem to remember something interesting near the temple.
Wait, Daddy, this is pretty loose.
Yeah, let's tighten it up. And I think we should put the side with the writing on the outside of the cover. Look,
Okay.
and then watch how we make it tight. First, we take this one, we hold this one down, we pull this one up like that. Got it?
Yeah.
Great. Your mother tells me that your next adventure will be to explore Machu Picchu. This ancient Incan city is located on a high mountain ridge. Your Grandma Lucy and I visited it many years ago. We woke up in the middle of the night to hike to the top and see the sunrise. While you are there, be sure to check out the Temple of the Sun. Also, I seem to remember something interesting near the temple. I believe it has to do with a bird, a snake, and another animal. I know that we used rope to get to it. You will have to find it for yourselves and report back to me. Good luck, my dears, and have fun. Adios y amor, Grandpa Harry. Ethan frowned. How are we supposed to find this thing? We don't even know what it looks like. he complained to Ella. Well, we do have some clues, Ella pointed out. She reached for her messenger bag and pulled out her purple notebook. Grandpa Harry had given it to her as a going-away present before their family left on their big trip. She picked up a pen and wrote, "Check out the Temple of the Sun. Find something nearby that has to do with a bird, a snake, and another animal. Use rope to get it." Chapter 3. He's gone. Good morning. Mrs. Briar stood next to the beds in the twins' room, hands on her hips. She looked excited and ready to go in her new alpaca sweater, jeans, and hiking boots. Ella rubbed her eyes. It was still dark outside. "What time is it?" she groaned. "It's time to go back to sleep," Ethan mumbled, pulling a pillow over his head. Mrs. Briar glanced at her watch. "Guys, you have exactly 15 minutes to get dressed and grab some breakfast. Otherwise, our bus to Machu Picchu will leave without us." "Can't we just catch the next one?" Ella begged. "Or the one after that?" came Ethan's voice from under the pillow. "I never told you this, but Grandpa Harry and Grandma Lucy visited Machu Picchu many years ago. They got up before sunrise so they could hike to the top and watch the sun rise," Mrs. Briar said with a wink. Ella and Ethan shared a smile. Their mom had no idea that Grandpa Harry had already mentioned all this in his email. "Hey, what's so funny?" Mrs. Briar asked. "Nothing, Mom. We'll get up now," said Ella. "Bet I can get dressed faster than you," Ethan challenged as he jumped out of bed. "No way," Ella yelled. A short while later, the Briar family was on the bus to Machu Picchu. Along the way, Mr. Briar gave
Dada,
the... Yeah?
Dada.
Okay. Are you comfy now?
Yes.
Good. You want to look at the pictures?
Yeah.
A short while later, the Briar family was on the bus to Machu Picchu. Along the way...
I don't really say that right.
You try it.
Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu. A short while later, the Briar family was on the bus to Machu Picchu. Along the way, Mr. Briar gave the twins a brief lesson on the historic site. He explained that Machu Picchu had likely been built as an estate for one of the Incan emperors. He added that it was often called the Lost City of the Incas. The bus chugged slowly up the mountain road. The twins gazed out the window. In the distance, dawn was beginning to break. The sky was streaked with pinks and golds. "Can you believe we're almost 8,000 feet in the air?" Mrs. Briar remarked. "Wow," said Ella. "No wonder it felt like they were in the clouds." A few minutes later, the bus arrived at the entrance to Machu Picchu, and everyone got off. "This is incredible," Mr. Briar gushed. Mrs. Briar began snapping pictures with her camera. The twins looked from left to right to take in the sweeping view. Before them was a vast village of stone buildings that had been built into the mountainside. A gray mist blanketed the landscape. They felt as though they had stepped into a long ago time. And not just that, but a long ago time in the clouds. Ethan tried to count the number of buildings, then gave up. There had to be at least 100, maybe even 200. "How are we going to find Grandpa Harry's temple?" he asked Ella. It won't be easy, Ella replied with a worried look. Just then, someone yelled, "He's gone!" Chapter 4. New friends. Who do you think's gone?
The snake.
The snake. Good guess, Charlie. The twins turned around. A little boy was talking to his dad. He looked upset. "Hey, that's the boy from yesterday," Ella said to Ethan. Ethan nodded. The mother of the family glanced up and waved to the Briars. "Hello! You are in our tour group at the salt mines," she called out. "We're the Novaks. This is our son, Dylan, and our daughter, Deanna." Mrs. Briar smiled and introduced her family. Dylan tugged on Mrs. Novak's jacket. "Mom, this is an emergency. We have to find him now." "Find who?" Ethan asked Dylan curiously. "Slither. He's the fiercest anaconda snake in the whole wide world," Dylan cried out. "We just returned from the Temple of the Sun. Dylan thinks he lost his toy snake there," Mr. Novak explained to the Briars. "The Temple of the Sun?" Ella elbowed Ethan. He elbowed her back. "We have to go back there right this second," Dylan told his parents. "We can't do that, honey. We're going to the museum now," Mrs. Novak said patiently. "Maybe later." "Museum? What museum?" asked Mrs. Briar. "There's a museum with exhibits about the history of Machu Picchu," Mr. Novak replied. "I teach history at Addison College," he added. Mr. Briar beamed. "Really? I teach history at Brookston College." "You should come to the museum with us," Mrs. Novak suggested. "Hey, I have a good idea. Deanna, why don't you take your brother back to the Temple of the Sun to look for his snake? We can meet back here at 10 o'clock. "Really, Mom? Do I have to?" Deanna complained. Ella elbowed Ethan again. He turned to their parents. "Can we go with Deanna and Dylan? Please?" Ethan begged. "Please?" Ella echoed. "Deanna is 16. She's very responsible. And she knows the way to the temple and back, because we were just there," said Mrs. Novak. Mr. Briar pushed his glasses up on his nose. "Well, I don't see why not," he said after a moment. Mrs. Briar nodded. "You must stay with Deanna the whole time. Okay, kids?" Ethan and Ella grinned at each other. "Temple of the Sun, here we come," Ethan thought excitedly. Chapter 5. Snake Search. Deanna, Dylan, and the twins started for the Temple of the Sun. Bushy trees and moss-covered rocks lined the craggy path. The early morning sun lit up the nearby mountains. "So, when was the last time you saw your snake?" Ella asked Dylan. "I was playing with it at the sunny temple place," replied Dylan. Ella pulled her purple notebook out of her bag. She flipped it open to a blank page and wrote, "Dylan's blue snake is missing. Last seen at the Temple of the Sun." Deanna peeked over Ella's shoulder. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I like to take notes whenever there's a mystery to solve," Ella explained. Dylan perked up. "Mystery? Wow. Are you, like, superhero detectives?" Ella grinned. "Not exactly. But when we were in Paris, France, we found a stolen painting. And when we were in Mumbai, India, we solved a mystery about spices. We solved mysteries in Italy, China, Kenya, and back home, in Brookston, too," Ethan added. "Cool. Can you solve the mystery of my snake?" Dylan asked eagerly. "We're already on the case," said Ella. The four of them continued down the path. They passed a cluster of stone buildings. Up close, Ethan could see how huge and heavy the stones were. During the bus ride, Mr. Breyer had taught them about Incan architecture and how the Incans built their buildings. The Incans didn't have any machines to carry the stones. They didn't use mortar or glue to glue them to one another either. They simply fit all the stones perfectly together to construct their buildings. The Incans must have been really smart, Ethan thought. Beyond the cluster of stone buildings, a few llamas grazed by the side of the path. They were brown and white and way bigger than alpacas. "Hi, llamas. Do you guys live here?" Ella called out. The llamas blinked at her. Deanna reached into her purse and pulled out an apple. She held it out to the llamas. The llamas made an excited humming sound as they moved closer to Deanna. They jostled one another to get to the apple first. Then one of them opened its mouth and spat at the other one. "Ew!" Deanna cried out. She stuffed the apple back in her pocket. "Let's get out of here before they spit on us." "Good idea," Ethan said with a laugh. The four of them hurried down the path. Just as they turned a corner, Dylan began jumping up and down. "There's the Temple of the Sun!" he shouted. Chapter 6. Hidden Steps. The Temple of the Sun was a large stone building with a tower, lots of small windows, and no roof. Inside, one of the rooms was a long, flat rock that looked like a bed. Tourists wandered in and out and snapped pictures. "I wonder why it's called the Temple of the Sun," Ethan said as they walked up to it. "Actually, our dad told us why," began Deanna. "It turns out that the Incas built this temple in a special way. On the longest day of the year, solstice, the sun shines through one of the windows and lights up that big rock." "Cool!" Ella exclaimed. No wonder Grandpa Harry had wanted them to see it. Dylan stood on his tiptoes and peered through the window. "Slither, where are you?" she called out. "If we want to find Slither, we should probably retrace your steps," Ethan suggested. "Huh? What does that mean?" asked Dylan. "That means you should try to remember exactly where you were before. Then we'll look for Slither in all of those places," Ella exclaimed. "Oh, okay." Dylan put his hands on his hips and scrunched up his face. "Well, first I went all around the temple with my mom and dad and Deanna. Then I sat under that leafy tree and ate some bunny crackers," he said, pointing. "Then I played in that grassy part over there," he added, pointing in a different direction. Ella wrote all this down in her notebook. "Got it. Okay, let's get started." She, Ethan, Dylan, and Deanna circled the temple once, twice, and then 3 times. There was no sign of Slither. Next, they looked under the leafy tree. They found a couple of bunny crackers, but no Slither. Finally, they went over to the grassy area. Still no Slither. "Somebody stole him," Dylan wailed. "He's gone forever." "Wait." Ella got down on her hands and knees. She crawled through the tall, thick grass in search of Slither. She was just about to give up when she saw a flash of blue. It was Slither, hidden in the grass. Ella picked up the snake and rose to her feet. Just then, the sun peeked out from behind a cloud and lit up a patch of wildflowers nearby. On the other side of the flowers was a set of stone steps. Chapter 7. A Secret Bridge.
I think those stairs lead to the bridge.
You're right.
You can only see from if you come out.
Dylan, Deanna, and Ethan rushed up to Ella. Ella handed Slither to Dylan. You found him, Dylan said, hugging Slither. I found something else, too, Ella said, pointing to the stone steps. Ethan walked over to the top of the steps. They sloped down a gentle cliff and disappeared into the mist. Steps to nowhere, Ethan thought. He squatted down and peered over the edge. Actually, the steps did lead somewhere. They curled around the side of the cliff and went down pretty far. Ella knelt down next to Ethan. Grandpa Harry wanted us to find something near the Temple of the Sun that had to do with a snake, a bird, and another animal. She said slowly, Do you think this is the way to get there? Maybe, Ethan replied. What are you two talking about? Deanna asked. Ethan told Deanna and Dylan about Grandpa Harry's email. Ella and I are going to check it out. You guys can wait here if you want. Deanna shook her head. No way. We're coming with you. I promised your parents I would look after you. Slither, we're going on an adventure, Dylan said happily. They started down the steps. Ella took a quick peek in her notebook. Grandpa Harry told us that he and Grandma Lucy used rope to get to this special place, she reminded Ethan. Maybe they used rope to climb up a mountain, Deanna suggested. Or maybe they used the rope to swing from tree to tree, like monkeys, Dylan said, giggling. The four of them continued walking down the stairs. Thick mist swirled around them. Ella wondered where the sun had gone. After a while, they reached the bottom of the steps. Before them was a narrow bridge that stretched into the mist. It was made of wooden slats and a rope. Rope, the twins said together. Ella hesitated. It didn't look very safe, but she knew Grandpa Harry would never lead them into danger. They began crossing the bridge. Ethan led the way, and Deanna brought up the rear. The wooden slats wobbled beneath their feet. The rope railings barely kept them steady, and the mist made it hard to see. Ella glanced over the side and gulped. The valley below was barely visible. They were up very high on a very old bridge. Be brave, she told herself. Ethan? I'm not sure about this, she stammered. Ethan thought for a moment. He could tell everyone was nervous. What's a snake's favorite class in school? He asked. What? Asked Dylan, confused. History, replied Ethan. Is that a bad joke? Dylan and Ella laughed. Deanna cracked a smile. What color socks does a bear wear? Ethan went on. What color? Asked Ella. He doesn't wear socks because he has bare feet, said Ethan. Get it? Like bare feet. Ethan, is that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Ethan told several more jokes. Before long, they had reached the other side. Ethan stepped off the bridge and looked around. There was no sign of what Grandpa Harry had told them about. Just trees, rocks, and grass. He tried to hide his disappointment. Ella came up to him. Maybe this was the wrong way, she said quietly. A cry sounded from above. The twins lifted their faces to the sky. A massive black bird circled in the air. The bird swooped down toward the ground. It landed on top of a big rock formation behind a row of trees. Except, it wasn't just any rock formation. It looked like a cave. Chapter 8. The Tree of Life. The bird perched on top of the cave entrance and fixed its beady eyes on the foursome. Is it going to eat us? Dylan asked nervously. Of course not, Deanna replied, although she didn't sound very sure. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out his gold coin. Grandpa Harry had given it to him as a going-away present. It had a hawk on one side and a globe on the other. The bird up there doesn't look like a hawk. It must be something else, Ethan thought. Maybe it wants us to go into the cave, Ella guessed. The bird gave another screech, flew off in the direction of the bridge, and vanished into the mist. Ethan hurried up to the cave and peered inside. "Hello?" he shouted. "Hello!" his voice echoed back. He turned his body sideways and inched through the narrow opening. The other three did the same.
No.
The air in the cave was cool and smelled like K. A drip, drip sound came from somewhere within. "I can't see anything. Can you?" Ella asked her brother. "Too dark," Ethan replied. Deanna held up her cell phone. "This might help," she said, touching the screen. A pale light flickered on. It lit up the small section of the rocky cave floor. Deanna swung the phone around in a slow arc. It lit up more of the floor and several rocky walls. A thin trickle of water dripped from the ceiling. Then she swung the phone to the middle of the cave. Ella gasped. So did Ethan. There, in the center, stood a tall stone sculpture. The sculpture was made up of three creatures: a bird, some kind of wild cat, and a snake. The bird looked like the one they had just seen outside the window. Ella turned to Ethan. "We found it!" she said excitedly. Ethan grinned and nodded. "Yeah, but what is that animal? Is it a tiger? Maybe it's a panther," Deanna guessed. "Maybe a mountain lion." "Rah!" Dylan growled. "It's a puma," a voice came from behind them. Ella screamed. Dylan screamed too. Deanna grabbed her brother and held him close. "Who's there?" Ethan demanded. A flashlight clicked on. A bright light fell across the cave. A gray-haired man stood just inside the cave entrance. Who was he? The man stepped forward. Ethan and the others stepped back. Then Ella noticed a badge on his khaki shirt. The badge said, "Hector Ruiz, volunteer, Machu Picchu." Deanna noticed it too. "You work here?" she asked him. "Yes, my name is Hector. I'm one of the volunteers here at Machu Picchu," he replied. "I am sorry for scaring you children. I came by to check on this sculpture. It is a very valuable artifact of the Inca civilization." "That means it's something that the Incas left behind," Deanna whispered to the group. "Our Grandpa Harry is a famous archaeologist. He studied lots and lots of artifacts. He's the one who told us to find this sculpture," Ella said to Hector. Hector's eyes twinkled. Is your grandfather Harry Robinson, by any chance? You know Grandpa Harry? Asked Ethan, surprised. Yes, from long ago, Hector replied. I'm glad he led you to this sculpture. Did he tell you that it represents the tree of life? Ella shook her head.
No.
No. What's that? The tree of life symbolizes how the Incas viewed the world, Hector explained. See the snake? It is at the bottom, since snakes are closest to the earth. The puma is in the middle, and this bird, which is the condor, is at the very top. Birds are closest to the sky. The four kids listened, fascinated. The tree of life is also displayed in this way, Hector said, pulling a charm from his pocket. You are lucky to have found the secret bridge that leads to this cave. Not many people know about it, Hector added. We like to find secret stuff, said Ethan with a smile. We are superhero detectives, Dylan piped up. Everybody laughed. Alright, we're almost done. Chapter 9. Superhero Detectives. It was morning when Hector walked the kids back over the rickety wood and rope bridge. Somehow, the crossing didn't seem quite so scary this time. Maybe it was Hector's presence, or maybe it was the sun shining brightly in the sky. Do you know how to get back to where your parents are waiting for you? Hector asked when they reached the other side. No problem. We'll just retrace our steps, Ella replied. They thanked Hector and said goodbye. Then they hurried up a stone steps and found the path toward the Temple of the Sun. They passed the Temple of the Sun, then the grazing llamas, then the cluster of stone buildings. Ethan glanced nervously at his watch. They were supposed to meet their parents at the main entrance in just a few minutes. Would they make it in time? The foursome reached the entrance at exactly 10. Their parents arrived a few minutes later. I'm sorry we kept you waiting. It was hard to tear ourselves away from the wonderful museum, Mrs. Breyer apologized. I hope you kids had fun. We can't wait to hear all about your adventures, Mr. Breyer added. Did you find the snake? Mrs. Novak asked Dylan. Dylan held up Slither. Yeah, and we found another snake too, and a condor, and a puma. They weren't real, Ella added quickly. Oh, well, I bet you kids didn't know that the snake, the condor, and the puma were very important to the Incas, Mr. Breyer said. Mr. Novak spoke up. Yes, they represent the 3 levels in the Tree of Life. That's really interesting, Ethan said, elbowing Ella. We already knew that because we're superhero detectives, Dylan burst out. We solved the mystery of the missing Slither. Then we found a secret bridge. Then a magical bird told us to go into a cave to find the treasure. That's very nice, honey, Mrs. Novak said, patting Dylan on the head. Okay, so who's ready for another hike? The twins winked at Deanna, and Deanna winked back. I guess this vacation isn't so boring after all, Deanna told them with a smile. Thanks, guys. You're welcome, said Ella. Just then, Ethan heard a familiar-sounding cry from above. He shielded his eyes from the sun. It was the black bird from before. Thanks for helping us find Grandpa Harry's treasure, Ethan whispered. The bird gave a shriek and disappeared into the clouds. The end. Did you like that one?
Yeah.